The Toronto Maple Leafs have grappled with competing in the most challenging division in the NHL for years. Anticipate little alteration in the upcoming year, even though the Toronto Maple Leafs possess a reasonably favorable chance to secure the division title. In recent times, the Leafs have been impacted by the NHL's seeding system, which, for 2 consecutive years, has pitted them against Tampa in the initial round, despite both teams being among the NHL's finest. In fact, it could be contended that the matchups between Toronto and Tampa were just as monumental, if not more so, than the eventual Stanley Cup final in each of the last 2 years. Although Boston and Tampa are expected to experience declines next year, do not anticipate substantial transformations. The Toronto Maple Leafs, still competing in the toughest division. The constituent teams might shift, but the Atlantic Division will remain a hub of ferocious competition next year. First and foremost, the Toronto Maple Leafs, despite an underwhelming offseason, will retain their stature as one of the NHL's premier teams. This stems from the paramount importance of star players, and the Leafs have managed to retain their lineup of such talents. Yet, even given their excellence, the robustness of the Atlantic Division implies that any team could potentially miss out on a playoff berth. Following that, the Florida Panthers, who clinched the President's Trophy 2 years ago and captured the Stanley Cup last year, are poised to sustain their prowess. Buffalo's status as a perennial underperformer is set to change with the presence of Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power. With 2 exceptional defensemen and a host of highly drafted skilled players either in the pipeline or already contributing, Buffalo is destined for increased competitiveness. Boston set an NHL record for points in a single season, and while their performance is projected to regress, any team featuring David Pastrnak, with 61 goals, and top 10 NHL defenseman Charlie McAvoy is primed for contention. Both Detroit and Montreal will likely continue to struggle, yet they constitute just 2 of the 8 teams within the division. Ottawa is poised for substantial improvement. In any other division, they would certainly secure a playoff berth. It's quite probable they'll manage it this time. Lastly, but certainly not least, Tampa remains a potent force. Despite being eliminated by the Toronto Maple Leafs in the opening round of last year's playoffs, Tampa boasts stalwarts like Andrei Vasilevsky, Steven Stamkos, Victor Hedman, Braden Point, and Nikita Kucherov. In essence, the odds are quite favorable for Tampa to return to their preeminence as the NHL's top team, following a relatively lackluster year. The Atlantic Division is a whirlwind of competition. Excluding Detroit and Montreal, any of the remaining 6 teams could vie for the division crown or even contend for the Stanley Cup. Tampa, Toronto, Florida, and Boston should all be virtually assured of securing playoff berths. They are projected to be among the most dominant teams in the NHL. This would, however, imply that either both wild card spots will be occupied by Atlantic Division teams or Ottawa and Buffalo will once again miss out on the playoffs, which would be quite surprising given the makeup of their rosters.